Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind The Country Chic Cottage. So today we're going to talk about Cricut materials. Materials that you can use with your Cricut machine, a breakdown of the different types of materials, as well as what you would use them for. Now this video is sponsored by Cricut, however all projects and opinions are my own. So we're going to run down a wide range of materials. As you can see, I have a ton of materials spread out in front of me. Don't let that intimidate you. I'm going to break them down into sections and we're going to talk about each type of material individually so that hopefully this will help you pick a material when you go to make a Cricut project. So let's start with paper. So many people buy their first Cricut machine as a paper cutter, which is perfectly fine. And you can use it just to cut paper. Now, paper comes in a wide variety of types. So you can cut everything from copy paper to really heavy cardstock with just about any Cricut machine, and the fine point blade, which comes with any of your Cricut machines. Now, I do recommend a high quality cardstock. I do love the Cricut brand of cardstock. What happens is people buy a lower quality cardstock thinking they're getting a really great deal, and their cuts look horrible. And I end up with messages in my inbox about their Cricut machine not cutting their cardstock properly. It generally boils down to like a low quality paper that does not cut as well. So I would encourage you to think about the paper you're picking and think about picking quality products when you're looking at that. Now, cardstock comes in different weights. So you may hear something like 80-pound cardstock or 100-pound cardstock. The higher that number, the thicker the paper is. So you do need to know that as well. The other thing with cardstock, and it may affect some of your projects. So this cardstock, if you look on the side, this is a Cricut stack of Cricut cardstock, and you can see that the color runs all the way through the paper. There are other cardstocks that have a white core. That means that the center of the paper is white and only the outside portion has the color. So that can affect the project depending on what you are making. So be sure to look for that as well, depending on what you're making. Now, what would you make with paper? Any paper craft. So you can make cards, banners, cake toppers, so many tags, like so many things out of paper. So it is like that really versatile material that I always keep on hand in my craft room. What I would recommend is like pick your favorite colors or colors you use a lot in your crafting and keep a wide variety of paper on hand. Now, let's talk about like some different types of paper. So the one type that I really love, it's called craft board. And yes, it's technically maybe a really thin chipboard, but it is from Cricut and it's called craft board. This is a variety pack with black, brown, and white inside of it. And it is a really thick paper. You can make like little boxes out of this and it's fairly sturdy. And you can cut this with any Cricut machine. And then the other thing you can do is cut multiple pieces out of this and stack them up and glue them together and get a heavier, thicker piece even up with your Joy or Explorer machine. So that's why like craft board is always in my craft room. The other thing I want you to consider is adhesive backed cardstock. So Cricut has two different sizes of that now. One of those sizes is made for the Joy, but you could definitely put it on a mat and cut it with your Explorer, your Maker. But this one, if you get the Smart Paper Sticker cardstock in the size for the Joy, it will cut in the Joy machine without a mat. And what it is a cardstock with an adhesive backing on the back. So now you don't have to have glue to make that card. You just cut your piece out of the adhesive cardstock, peel the backing, stick it right on. So I am really in love with this product. And now, with the release of the Explorer 3 and the Maker 3, they have this Smart Paper Sticker cardstock in 13 by 13 sheets. So these will cut without a mat in the Explorer 3 and Maker 3, but I just cut them down and use them on my Explorer Air 2 or the original Maker without any issue. So it will cut these on a mat as well in those two machines. And then you are ready to make, like I said, cards in minutes or whatever that is, like little pieces to stick on a banner, cut them out, peel the backing, stick it on, no other adhesive required. So I really do love this product and I use it quite a bit for different projects. That way I don't have to worry about, like, I get asked all the time, what type of glue do you use for paper? You don't even have to worry about it when you use that adhesive back cardstock. So when we're talking about cards, Cricut does make insert cards for the Cricut Joy. Now these are intended to be used with the Cricut Joy card mat, and cards as well as the insert come in here. And there are projects in Cricut Design Space to make those quick and easy cards. I love making these with my Joy. But you can combine the cards that are in here, just plain cards, with the sticker paper cardstock, and you could make a card in like your maker with some pieces out of that stuck on these cards as well. So I just keep these on hand and use them to make quick cards in a variety of ways. Let's move on from paper to vinyl. So adhesive vinyl is the one we're going to talk about next. And adhesive vinyl is a vinyl product with a sticky backing. So it would be used on hard surfaces. So glass, if we're talking about something like permanent. So there are two different types, permanent vinyl and removable vinyl. Permanent vinyl is permanent when put on a surface. So I would put it on glass mugs, maybe a wall hanging where I was putting it on wood, anything where I wanted the application to be permanent. Removable, however, I could put on, say, a wall for a wall decal and remove it later without damaging the surface. So vinyl can be like used on all sorts of things. You can even put it on paper that we just talked about. So if you don't have vinyl already in your craft room, I would encourage you to experiment with it and play around. So vinyl comes on a roll generally, like these big rolls I have here, and you can get a couple different types now. So the permanent and removable will both come in a roll from Cricut, and now they also have smart vinyl. So the smart vinyl is a little wider, and it cuts without a mat on the Explorer 3 and Maker 3. The regular rolls of vinyl can be used on any Cricut machine, including the Explorer 3 and Maker 3. You just need to use a mat with these. And then you can also get vinyl that is sized for the Joy in both permanent and removable. And again, it's called smart vinyl because you could use it in the Joy without a mat. So the Joy obviously cuts a width that is smaller, so you need that smaller width smart vinyl. Now there is a special vinyl that is for the Joy, and it's called Smart Label Material. You can write on it with pens, and it's permanent. So this is a really great product to consider if you want to organize with your Cricut Joy machine. Now, vinyl comes in so many varieties. If you can think about it, they probably make it. So anything from like metallics to holographic, different patterns. So you could have patterns instead of solid colors. Probably whatever you're imagining your project to be like, you could probably find a Cricut vinyl to match. So I would encourage you to like look online for inspiration or come up with inspiration in your head and then look on the Cricut website, because I'm sure there's a vinyl that will work for your project. So when we're talking about specialty vinyls though, I did want to mention a couple different ones. So one is stencil vinyl. So if you want to make a stencil, that's a great option. And it peels and sticks and is self-adhesive, just like regular vinyl, but is specially made just for stencils. And then there's also a product called Window Cling. So if you want to make decals for your windows, I highly recommend the Window Cling instead of like a removable vinyl. And this would be decals like on your windows that you don't want to be permanent. If you're making something like a car decal for your car, what will be out in the weather, I do recommend the permanent vinyl for that. So kind of two different applications there. And then anytime you use vinyl products, you will need to use transfer tape. And I have a couple examples over here. So transfer tape comes in a few different widths and types. So there's a transfer tape that is just for the Joy vinyl if you wanted a smaller width. And then there is the transfer tape for the smart vinyl, as well as a version for the regular vinyl that isn't quite as wide. And then there are a couple different types of transfer tape. So there is strong grip and regular grip. Regular grip is basically for every type of vinyl, except for glitter, sometimes metallic, and sometimes foil. Glitter vinyl especially is super hard to pick up, so they recommend the strong grip transfer tape. Sometimes you also need the strong grip for a few of the specialty vinyls, like maybe if you're dealing with metallic or foil and you can't get it to lift up with regular, I recommend trying that strong grip. So anytime you're using some of those odder types of vinyl, you might need to switch to the strong grip. Generally though, like with the glitter vinyl, the roll comes with a strong, like some strong grip transfer tape inside of it. And it's a lot of times all you need. I do keep an extra roll on hand for me, but for you, if you just like are using glitter vinyl occasionally, you might get away with just what's in the roll. All right, so this is vinyl for hard surfaces. What about if I want to make a shirt? What do I use for that? That is called iron-on vinyl, and I have examples of it over here. So iron-on vinyl is made with an adhesive on the back, yes, but that adhesive is heat activated, so it doesn't activate until you actually apply heat to it. So it's perfect for shirts, hats, tote bags, shoes, anything that is porous. You can put HTV or iron-on. You might hear both of those terms and they both mean the same thing. You can put iron-on on top of it. So again, a few different varieties. So you have the regular and the smart iron-on. Again, the smart iron-on would be whiter. And again, iron-on comes in so many different patterns, types, holographic, metallics, foils, like so many different types and varieties to really personalize your projects. So think about your project and what type of iron-on is, in that dream project of yours, and check out the Cricut website. Then you can also, of course, get it in these smaller sizes for the Joy. So again, the Smart products, Smart iron-on in Joy size and regular, would cut without a mat on the Cricut Joy in this case, and on the Explorer 3 and Maker 3 in this case. And this one is a glitter version because there's glitter iron-on as well. Now with vinyl, we talked about transfer tape. With iron-on, the carrier sheet is sort of attached to it. And I do have basic videos for cutting and using all of these products. So if I get to a product and you're like, I really don't know how to use iron-on, drop down in the comment section and ask me, and I will drop a basics video for you to teach you all about how to use it as well. So now that we have iron-on out of the way, what else could we put on fabric? That answer is Infusible Ink. Infusible ink is used with polyester fabrics. I do recommend at least 75% polyester, but any fabric would work. So you could go with a polyester shirt, a polyester tote bag. They make pillow covers. Cricut has all kinds of blanks as well. Note that. And you can also put it on poly-coated surfaces. So now they make mugs that have a poly coating on the outside that the Infusible ink will work with. So why polyester? Infusible ink needs that polyester to create a chemical reaction, and that chemical reaction makes it permanent. So you do need the polyester, otherwise it will not work properly. So there are different types of Infusible ink as well. There are the larger versions, and then the versions for the Joy or the mug press, which are the same width. So these, again, like I have some pattern here, I have some plain, tons of different pattern options and things for you to choose from when you're picking the option for your project. So whether you're using a small strip for your mug press or a longer strip, and you can cut these longer strips down to size for your mug press or the Joy or whatever. And that is something to note. So if you have the Joy, you can get this big roll of iron-on and just cut it to the size to fit on the Joy mat. You definitely don't have to purchase the smaller size Smart iron-on. Sometimes it's more convenient, but it's definitely not a requirement. All right, so now that we talked about putting stuff on hard surfaces, putting stuff on fabric surfaces and porous surfaces, let's dive into a few more options for those of you that have any Cricut machine. So the next few options we're going to talk about will work in the Joy, Explorer, or the Maker series. So any of the Cricut machines will work with the next few options we talk about. So the next option I wanted to talk about is foil. So there is a foil tool that is sold separately, and there's one for the Joy, and then there's one that fits in the Explorer or the Maker. So this is basically a shiny metallic foil, and you use that foil tool to apply this material to mainly paper and paper products. If you have the Explorer or the Maker, you could also do put it on faux leather and things like that. So it gets a little more exciting when you get into that, but tons of different options for putting that foil metallic shine. And there are a couple different sizes of foil sheets, but you can definitely cut the larger sheets with scissors and just cut them down to size. Not a problem at all. The next thing I'm going to talk about is printable products. So I have some printable vinyl here because the Cricut printable vinyl is my personal favorite. However, there are tons of different printable products, from printable clear sticker paper to printable sticker paper, whatever you love. I personally love the Cricut printable vinyl for my stickers. Now, the Cricut Joy does not do print then cut. So this does exclude that machine, but both the Explorer and Maker do print then cut. So you can send from Cricut Design Space to your printer, and then it prints with like a registration box around the outside, shows the Cricut where to cut, and you can cut out pieces on this. And then, because this is a printable vinyl, all of a sudden I have a sticker that I designed myself in Cricut Design Space. Or I could print like a full sheet and have like my own printable vinyl that is similar to this over here. So this is like a really fun product to play with, and I like playing with printable products and my printer in like conjunction with my Cricut machine. And now let's talk about acetate. So I have a couple varieties of acetate here. Acetate is a clear sheet, and I have some that is just plain clear. And then this version is actually a foil acetate, so it has like a foil design around the clear. So this one on top happens to be stars, and then it's clear in between there. So this is amazing for making adding to your crafts, or using it by itself to make like a favor box out of acetate sheets. And acetate will cut on any Cricut machine. Then Cricut also makes felt. And the reason I love this, it's like a stiff felt, and it cuts amazingly, even like on the Explorer machine, with just like your fabric blade or your fine point blade. And I find that a lot of like cheap felt sheets that you pick up like at the craft store, they don't cut on those machines. I can cut those on my Maker kind of successfully with the rotary blade, but this felt cuts amazing on every Cricut machine. Like, it's a really good stiff felt that cuts really great. So you can get those really intricate cuts for something like felt flowers easily with the Cricut felt. More easily, I feel like, than felt I find like in the craft store. All right, so now let's talk about leather, suede, that type of thing. So the Cricut makes a faux leather and a faux suede. It's the faux leather and faux suede that I use. This material is really great. You can cut it on any Cricut machine. So you could cut it on the Joy if you wanted to, the Explorer, the Maker, any Cricut machine. And it looks like leather. It's just not as thick as leather, won't have that same feel and texture, but it's really lightweight. So it's really great for making jewelry, making earrings, that type of thing, and cuts super easily. So you really don't, I don't know if I've ever had anyone have trouble cutting like a faux leather. Now, when you get to the Maker, you can cut genuine leather, and Cricut does have a line of genuine leather sheets. It is a little bit trickier to cut. I can definitely do it successfully on my Maker, but it's definitely like a learning curve more to cutting it. Whereas if you could get by with faux leather for your project, like, you will be cutting and off to the races right away. So I will say, like, I really like the faux products just for that reason. Now that those materials are out of the way, let's talk about Maker only materials. So when we're talking about Cricut machines, we go from the Cricut Joy to the Cricut Explorer to the Cricut Maker. So I kind of see it as a progression. The Cricut Joy being the smallest and simplest machine, up to the Cricut Maker, which is the most complicated. And all of these materials will work on the original Cricut Maker or the Cricut Maker 3. They all do these same materials. So let's talk about what you can do with the Cricut Maker and Cricut materials. So the first material I have here is aluminum sheets. The Cricut Maker can't cut these because they are way too thick for that. However, it can engrave them. So you can make some really cool projects with engraving on metal, and these aluminum sheets are a great place to start with that. Next up, we're going to talk about like chipboard, wood, that type of thing. Chipboard. You can get couple different thicknesses, 1.5 millimeter and 2 millimeter. So the 1.5 millimeter, I feel like it does cut more consistently. So I do try to use that when I can. If I do need the thicker 2 millimeter, I have cut it successfully several times before. And I do love that the 1.5 millimeter or the thinner chipboard comes in some of these patterned pieces. So it can really add to your project as well. If you are looking for structural projects, so you're really looking for something to be super sturdy, you just want to cut it once, one piece, you don't want to do any layering, chipboard to me is the way to go. This is super heavy duty. It is going to hold up. I mean, we're talking like, you know, you can build things out of this material and it is going to hold up. So I would definitely recommend this for those structural projects where you need a lot of weight, even like this house on the front of here. And I have made something like these puzzles before right here on YouTube. So things that you want to be super heavy duty. Now, wood, let's talk wood. The basswood is definitely by far my favorite, and Cricut makes an amazing basswood. The basswood, if I buy it anywhere else, I always have trouble cutting it with my maker. The Cricut basswood is extremely consistent and cuts the best that I have found. Now, your Cricut maker will also cut balsa wood. I personally don't like balsa wood. Cricut doesn't make any balsa wood, but you can buy it at the craft store. If I'm going to cut wood with my maker, I always use the basswood. Now, frankly, I think the chipboard cuts better and is more consistent in cutting. So if I can get away with it, I would rather use the chipboard. But if I want like that wood look to the project, basswood is what I pull out, and I always get the Cricut brand. But I have a secret for you. If you want that wood look on a project and you don't even have the maker, Cricut makes wood veneer sheets. And they're like a thin paper sheet. Then you just adhere them to whatever else. So that craft board we talked about at the very beginning when we talked about paper, you could stack it up and then put this on top and you would get that wood look to a project, all with not your maker. So you could definitely cut this with other Cricut machines. So this is a product I love. It comes in different finishes. I use it quite a bit to get like a wood look on something, even though whatever that is not actually wood or it's layered on top of it. All right, so that's the Cricut materials I have for you. But I did want to talk about pens just a minute because I feel like I'll get some questions on this video about pens if I don't talk about them in just a minute. So technically they probably wouldn't be a material. It would be used to write on a material, but I did just want to briefly go over pens. So pens you can use in any Cricut machine, but the Cricut Joy does require a different pen, so be sure you get the ones labeled Cricut Joy. Otherwise, these pens fit all the Explorer, all the Maker machines, and you can get regular pens and Infusible Ink pens. So with a regular pen, you would write on things like paper, you would write on that label material we talked about for the Cricut Joy. So you could write on different things with the pens. With Infusible Ink pens, you would write on, say, the copy paper, and then you would transfer it to that polyester coated material or that polyester shirt that we talked about earlier when we talked about Infusible Ink. So this is basically what's in this sheet form and pen form, and they also make pens that you can hand color as well as ones that fit in your machine. So I just wanted to briefly overview the pens just in case there were questions about that as we talked about everything else. Now, as I talked about, I have probably videos detailing how to use each of these products. So if you have a question about one of these products, drop down in the comments section, ask away. I'll drop you another video link. If you like this video, if it helped you, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We have videos like this every week and you don't want to miss any of those. So I hope you enjoyed our overview of Cricut materials and it helps you decide what material to use for your Cricut project. I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.